Thanks, Dave. Great to be here. So I was passing a patient's room at the VA hospital, and my upper year resident tugged at my elbow and said, "Maria, take a good look at this." And in the room, I saw an elderly man. He had a thin sheet pulled up like a blanket. He was gaunt, bald. His sunken eyes stared up at nothing. And his mouth formed an O, and he struggled with every gasp. What was I seeing? Why was I seeing it? That's what someone looks like when they're about to die. My resident looked like a parent imparting great wisdom to the next generation. Remember what this looks like. Now, surprisingly, I didn't react with alarm or sadness. I took my emotional cues from my resident, and I observed this keenly and matter-of-factly with my burgeoning clinical lens. It was August of 1992, and I was just learning to see things like a doctor. I was a fourth-year medical student doing my required acting internship at the VA. Problem was, I was well ensconced in my quarter-life crisis, questioning my career path. I thought, what did I get myself into? I don't think I want to be a doctor. I don't want to be here. How did I get here? Well, it was an unfortunate series of naive decisions. I abandoned my childhood interests of writing and performing, especially when my parents demanded that I pursue a field with more gravitas and a steady income. And it's tough being an only child, a sole repository of all the hopes and dreams of my high-achieving immigrant parents. So like them, I'm a superachiever, so I applied to medical school and I got in at the University of Pittsburgh. But I will admit, I despised med school. It was cutthroat, the professors bullied the students. Worst of all, it was rigid. Nothing creative about it at all. And I knew it was not going to be a good long-term fit. But I couldn't get out. I went to the school counselor, told her I wanted to quit. She said, "Oh, stick with it. It'll get better when you get to your clinical rotations." But it didn't get better. It just got different. And at that point, my student debt is mounting, and I saw no other choice but to become a doctor to pay it off. So there I was, a fourth-year student doing my AI at the VA, this monolithic governmental building with vestiges of mid-century unmodern furnishings and signage in standard issue bureaucratic font. And at that time, the patients were mostly men, and they were in rooms of 2 or 4, or sometimes this great room of 12 with the bed separated by pulled back curtains. The arrangement was reminiscent of barracks, and it gave great fraternity to these aging veterans and their failing health. Now, my attending that month was Dr. Bruce Dixon. I know. Brilliant internist, infectious disease specialist, public health expert. In addition to his faculty appointment at the med school, he was also head of the county health department, which had been down here on Forbes. And he was in charge of my team. Now, he was the antithesis to the helicopter attending. He didn't come to daily rounds. He showed up twice a week to sign our notes. His view, they're smart, they'll figure it out. Now, I appreciated the approach. In a paradoxical way, it instilled responsibility and gave me confidence. But his methods did not go over so well with everyone. My teammates wanted more structured lessons, lectures on hypercalcemia and amyloidosis and tuberculosis. So Dr. Dixon agreed to lecture. So the 5 of us squeezed into the residence room, and he perched himself up on a desk and began to speak. But not on medical topics, on his work at the health department, about the political hurdles, the process of public health. The others hated it. They flicked their fingernails or they stared off into space. But I hung on every word. I sensed he was opening a door for me, but I didn't see it at the time. Now, the lesson of Dr. Dixon was not simply politics or process. He showed me with his words and with his actions that there was more to being a doctor than just practicing medicine. You had an obligation to use your background to improve the world in other ways. So I didn't fully see the lesson then. And I finished med school, and I went on to become a neurologist because I'm a super cheaper. And it wasn't until years later, after I'd subjected myself to the regimented assembly line culture of private practice in Beaver County, and then later on down here at the Coffin Building on 5th with UPMC. It wasn't until years later that I felt that final, definitive tug away from my first career. It was almost as if Dr. Dixon or someone were whispering, "Maria, take a good look at yourself, at what you're doing." Was it time for its last breath? Now, I liked the analytical part of being a doctor, but I felt the tug of my childhood callings of writing and performing. So after much research and soul-wrenching and more schooling and networking, I transitioned careers from medicine to television news. And for the past 17 years, I have been the medical reporter at one of the local stations. And every once in a while, when I'm out and about, a viewer will recognize me. But here in the last few months, an unexpected number of people have come up to me and thanked me for covering new medical technology, trends in healthcare, diseases in the community. They say, "Hey, we love your reports. Hope you're there for a long time." So perhaps I have used my background to improve the world in other ways. I may not have always understood what I was seeing the first time I was seeing it, but as life unfolds, the crystal clears. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.